Zachary, roll call.
Sure, so roll call, Patty Batshaw. Dr. Bombard,
Here.
Dr. Broderick,
Here.
Dr. Bryan, Dr. Closer, Dr. Gerling.
Yep.
Dr. Cardos, Dr. Katz,
Here.
Dr. Morgan, Dr. Mulvey,
Here.
Dr. Pollen,
Here.
Dr. Richards, Dr. St. Jean, Tammy Tromley,
Sorry, I'm here.
Dr. Muscardo, and Dr. Williams.
Here.
All right. Thanks, everybody. The minutes came out. I don't know if do you need a minute to review them? Because I know that they just came out early. Or do you want to just accept? What do you guys say?
If it wasn't
Or
a
did
formal
you-
meeting, we need formal minutes.
Yeah, so good point. We have
Again?
October, which we didn't approve because we weren't, and then we would then have the January one.
Good catch. Thank you.
Yeah.
Zach, do you want to pop the October minutes up as well? We'll take a minute to read. Okay. That's right. The world. Big drama. Jack, you want to scroll down a little bit, bud? Thanks. Ooh. Okay. Some more? And a little more?
Yeah, it's just what's also in this lowercase 1, 2, 3. Thank you. WGF.
Keep going, bud. All right.
And that's pretty much the end.
Okay. All right, cool.
And then January.
Well, January was just, wasn't it?
Yeah, I
It
guess
was
that
just
was-
all informal
yeah.
discussion, so we don't need to approve those minutes.
Yeah.
So I'll make
Yeah,
a
they
motion to,
were kind of non-minute minutes.
yep.
I'll second that.
Okay. Any discussion? All in favor of accepting the minutes? Any opposed? Okay. Well, we were doing the ones from October, really, because the last ones was a meeting that wasn't a meeting, right? Because we didn't have a quorum, so we're proving. Yep. So we were approving them all. Okay. We have a letter from Mohawk Ambulance that you guys all saw in your email a month or so ago. A supporting letter that was mentioned in the Mohawk thing. And we wanted to see that before I went and signed the Mohawk letter of support. It sounded like Tom, Doug, and Ben, it sounded like this is something that was needed, but we wanted to make sure that that supporting document was live and real and appropriate. Is that how I understood your emails back to me?
Yeah, when Empire folded, ambulance came in and their ability to respond has been limited, so having additional resources would be quite beneficial.
Okay, great.
All right, I apologize that this might appear a little small. And I can zoom in. So.
Great.
Yes, please.
Yeah, just tell me when you want me to.
Have you got any problems with this? Anyone got any issues? I don't think anyone, at least Glens Falls side, has any issues with this. So, I mean, it's a limited certificate of need just to be able to transport to Glens Falls Hospital and back down to Albany. I've got no problems.
Great.
Anyone else? We can just approve and move.
Yeah, to my knowledge, they don't have a medical director anyway, so.
No.
How ambulance can transport anything, so at least it's ALS, if BLS perhaps.
The ambulance, ambulance doesn't have a medical director, correct. But this is the whole idea is to approve Mohawk to contribute to the system. This was a letter that was requested by one of you. It might have been you, John. It was mentioned in the document that you wanted us to sign.
Yeah, no, I was just curious.
So it looks like I can sign this letter of support. You guys are okay with this?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to approve.
Beautiful. I'll second you.
I'll second.
Great, even better.
So what we'll do next is I'll get that letter of support attached to that. And then tonight for the REMSCO meeting, they need to deem it complete or incomplete, and then we'll start the timeline with everything else.
Okay,
so,
great. And I can, if you just remind me, I can sign that letter right after this meeting and
Okay.
run it away. Okay. We didn't vote though. How about we do any opposed? Sounds like we're all okay. Okay, beautiful. Pardon me, I'm just coming back and forth here. Okay. Do we have Joe or Mary or neither?
Yeah.
Okay, so Joe and Mary are at a meeting, so we're gonna have to defer our New York State DOH reports. So we're at QAQI. Do we have a representative from Clinton County? And I apologize that I can't see everybody. I think we do.
Clinton County has gone to their quarterly meetings. Had a meeting, we met, talked about cardiac issues. And actually, we didn't think we were doing badly, but we don't think we're doing super great either. So we have a couple of issues to work on. We are working on, I believe, diabetics this month. So we won't meet until July for that meeting. And then hopefully we'll have some more data. And then I attended an image trends meeting, which was very interesting the other day, about access to some of the data at the state level, which might be helpful to us. And I do think that if we can get into that system, and I'll have to go back and remind myself what it was I actually looked at, but there's a continuum in a slate. I think it's the continuum is the one we want to access, and all my agencies should be accessing to get their state data, correct? And so if we do that, I think it can make it easier for us to collect the data than the way we're doing it, which is scrolling through all the PCRs.
That's brutal.
So it would make it, when I looked at that data, I thought, this makes it a little easier. And that might be really very helpful. So stay tuned. We have work in progress still.
Okay.
Well, and I can add to that too. If there's any specific data that anyone wants to see, reach out to us at the office because we have access already to the state stuff. So we can pull whatever you want, or at least we can pre-build reports that you'll want to see. So that way, when you get into the system and start doing it, you don't have to parse through
It's
the
easy
system.
to build the report, specifically what you want when you look at the continuum side of it. So I think that, and I think it behooves all of our agencies to just go in and look at this data. Whether it's a agency or a large agency, it doesn't really matter. I think it'll give us data that is at least somewhat valid. The problem, of course, is you look at a chest pain patient, you're looking at chest pain like, I don't know, there must be 10 or 15 different ways to enter a patient with chest pain.
Yeah.
And it's very difficult to decide who's the cardiac and who's the chest painer. It's pretty easy to separate out the trauma, but the rest of it becomes much more difficult. So I do think it would be nice if the state could whittle down some of those in the field to make it a little more reasonable, but I'm not talked to Peter until we know what his plan is going forward with some of this data to make it more functional, because it needs to be more functional, obviously. I think that would be helpful. So, having said that, we'll stay tuned for next time. I'm hoping
Awesome.
I'm hoping I can get everybody hooked up. They'll have to hook up with Zach and he can get it off, and then they can get, but I don't know how they actually go in and access it through the state. We'll have to figure that out.
Well,
That's the biggest piece.
If Zach and John can take some of the workload away from you, that is always, it's always better to make them do more work.
They need to review that data themselves. I think that it's good for them to look at it.
Yeah,
And to
the agencies.
kind of figure out where they stand.
Oh, hold on.
Okay, ECH, somebody from ECH?
Hi, everybody. I'm back after a year and a half days.
Sounds like.
We just had our first meeting last couple weeks ago, which was super brief. I learned that only 14 slides can give more than 10 minutes worth of presentation. But anyway, trying to get back to
Sort of skip it, Aaron.
Can't hear him.
All right, so like I said, we had just had our first meeting the other day after a year and a half hiatus. That was pretty brief. Reviewed a cardiac arrest case out of Saranac Lake that ended up being a full ROSC to where the guy's back at home now. There was another 4 different cardiac arrest cases within our catchment that all had the similar outcome where they got ROSC and everyone's back home. We got 15 agencies now that are all within our catchment, so it's pretty much everyone in Essex County except for one agency. And what else can I tell you? We've been working on a couple different, going back through every chart to recast the data model that we've been doing for a while. And there was one thing where we were able to find through our review of a glucometer issue where the agency's monitor showed normal value. We're going to the hospital, it was like completely off. So we've been making some progress with our review style. Other than that, that's all I got for you.
Sorry, go.
Aaron, who's the one agency that's not with you guys in Essex County? Just out of curiosity.
Scroon Lake, they're a part of the Glens Falls catchment.
Dude, awesome.
So we cover everyone from Saranac Lake, Sable. Those are the two recent ones that joined, and then everyone within the middle of the county.
Great. Sounds good. Is anybody on from Ellis Hyde?
Scott's on TIF. We have been meeting. We haven't. It's been about 3 months since our last meeting, but we did have a meeting. We did review a couple of most DNR cases. A couple of cases we had trouble with. We've been doing some cardiac stroke reviews as well. So we'll have another meeting coming up probably August, September. And Dr. St. Jean is on. I don't know if he wanted to mention anything also.
Well, Jerry Dumas and Alice side, we resumed every 2 months series where we've had a couple. I think we've done OB and pediatrics so far. Next one is in June with I think it's going to be stroke. Yeah.
Dr. St. Gina, is your camera on? I can't see you. Hi. Great, thank you. We just need you on as a voting member.
Emmanuel is fine.
Thank you. All right, North Country Group. Glens Falls?
Sorry, I was just taking a second to unmute. So North Country continues to meet 2 to 3 times a quarter, reviewing interesting cases. Just to clarify, there are a couple Essex County agencies in the North Country group, in addition to Screw and Lake being in the Glens Falls group. But we're not territorial. But nothing, just our typical QI reviewing interesting cases and the bad outcomes, but good participation and discussion.
Glens Falls. Thoughts on here?
I don't know if they're having a problem with their audio, but I do know that they were meeting and.
All right. Oh, you guys missed it. I had a really good response. I'll try to summarize. No, we had our meeting a few weeks ago. No major issues, just kind of dealing with hospital operations things. But one of the things that did come up in specific agency QA process was that we had an issue where a provider was giving report to a nurse, and in the electronic records for their documentation, they have to get a nurse signature during the time of sign over, and the provider was used a photocopied signature for the nurse instead of the actual nurse's signature. So we had to correct that response. It wasn't a nefarious choice. It was one of those trying to save time and kind of a laziness thing, but it certainly was something that we caught and had to kind of address quite specifically with that provider urgently. So as a result, the agency looked into their documentation, and it turns out that when they turn a patient over, they need either a face sheet from the hospital or a nurse signature. And since they were getting face sheets, the nurse signature wasn't actually necessary. So they just cut out that option now so that we don't have that issue going forward. So I don't know, I presume it applies to other agencies, but it's just something for agencies to look at. Not that this is an issue with photocopying signatures, but perhaps we're eliminating a step that is unnecessary and may cause complications in the future.
Was that nurse signature, is that a requirement that the nurse receive a billing signature?
Say that again, is it what?
So, are your agencies required to get the nurse signature to prove that they gave report? Or is that the Medicare billing
No.
signature?
No, I think it was just a billing thing to document they turned the patient over. So because they got a face sheet, it's unnecessary to have a nurse signature. They were still doing it. And, you know, in busy times, one of the providers thought it would be easier to just use a photocopied signature of the same nurse, not a different nurse. It was the same nurse. Not that it makes it any better, but at least they weren't trying to, you know, say they give report to one person and use a different signature. So again, it was very quickly and swiftly corrected, but you know, it was just an issue that, you know, we can avoid in the future now.
All right. And Tri-Lakes, I'm not even sure if Tri-Lakes is actually still alive. We should talk about that today. CMAC report, I'm actually gonna defer to John. I think just sorry about that.
No problem.
But I was unable to make the CMAC. That would be a regular thing, I promise, but a little family deal.
Oh, just a question. I meant to raise my hand. So now they don't have to get signature. They won't be dropping off the patient, pick up the face sheet from registration. Busy. So we definitely, you know, they still have to give a report.
Absolutely. So there's a Medicare regulation. Pre-COVID, what happened is if the patient couldn't sign for themselves, a representative of the hospital, whether it be the doctor or the nurse, would sign for the patient. And what your signature said was that you received the patient. So I was curious as to, because like down in like Orange County, you have to, as an EMS provider, give a face-to-face presentation of your patient to the physician, actually, not even to the nursing staff. And I was curious when Ben talked about, or when Tom talked about this, you know, is there a requirement down there where, you know, once you give report to the nurse, there's a signature required as like proof of receipt of the report? And there is not, but that's just what I was trying to clarify. And I think during COVID, what happened is the receipt of the face sheet instead of the receipt of the signature became approved by Medicare, so that there was no like distribution of the same pen sort of thing. Remember when we were that freaked out? So I think that's when that happened. But yes, report on the patient is always required, absolutely. Okay. CMAC report from John, who just got ambushed, sorry.
Yep, no worries. Okay, so there was a lot of discussion over the ability for regions to credential providers. And basically the state was saying, no, the regions don't have the ability to do this, but the Med Standards Committee and the CMAC both say, yes, you do have the ability to credential. The question more should be de-credentialing providers in your regions. There was a lot of conversation about it that really kind of summed up with somebody from the state saying you legally can't do this, and one of the people on the SEMSCO saying, yes, we can, and we're going to vote on it and moving it forward. It was the highlight of both of those because it was the only part where there was any decent conversation. There's a couple new policy statements, excuse me, policy statements coming out, which will be covered in the program agency report. And they are looking at revising policy statement 1304, which is the alternative medicine policies. And it sounds like they're considering going more towards drug class versus specific drugs. And updating it because it's outdated. The colossal mess that we're going through, or that we had to go through to get Zopinex, and the state saying, no, we can't have Zopinex, and then one of the state's docs authorizing his complete regions to run and carry Zopinex, which is what we're gonna do here and in the North Country. Other than that, it was relatively uneventful. One thing they did discuss too, Dr. Daly brought up, is that they're running into a problem with stop the bleed kits. And a lot of them have hemostatic gauze in them. Well, hemostatic gauze is a patient-specific product, I guess. And school nurses are now being told that they're not allowed to use it or they are risking their license. Yeah, it's stupid.
So it's some sort of like, they did get through that.
So yeah, this was something that the State Trauma Advisory Committee addressed about 3 years ago. Dr. Gestring, there were a few of the staff members that actually went to the state ed department along with Dr. Daly and basically said this is ridiculous. And they had changed their policy on it and said that, you know, nurses could use QuickClot in an emergency as an emergency medication. And then the new statement just came out with the restriction again, stating that it is a medication, which it is not according to FDA. It's a medical device, which puts it under a different classification. And so the ruling on it is a bit ridiculous. And the committee is going back to the state ed department to see if they can get this rectified. The Stop the Bleed kits do have QuickClot in them. It is not a medication and it should not require a physician-specific order for each student in order for the school nurse to apply it in an emergency for hemorrhage. The State Trauma Advisory Committee also supported the application or the nurse's ability and is drafting a statement, policy statement to them as well.
Is there anything else that I missed, Tammy? For?
So they talked about the ITEL project. They have 95 agencies registered. Training is partially complete. Some of them are totally done and some of them are done. And then now we have to see what's in the game.
We can't understand, Storm, we can't understand you. You sound like the teacher on Peanuts, sorry.
Okay, so now we're gonna work that.
Do you want to come up closer?
No, I guess I could try.
Sorry, she's going to approach the owl. Stand by. Make sure it doesn't.
So for you, can you hear me better now? Is that better? Okay. So the IGEL project has 95 agencies across the state registered in it. So if you have members or agencies that are registered in your group, we've encouraged everybody in Clinton County to try and reach out and register for the project so that we can get it moving forward in our county. But they will be, the next step is now collecting the data and seeing where it's going to fall and whether it's going to work or not. So I think that that's going to take, I have no idea what their timeline is. But I would think 6 months to a year before they get enough data to be able to do that kind of a project. So stay tuned. I'm sure we'll hear more about this at every meeting because people are interested in doing it.
Jonathan, did you speak about the blood transfusions? I stepped away, I had a call.
No, I did not yet.
So that's the other one. You want to take that one, Debbie?
Just a thought, like, if you're interested in doing the BLS iGel and you have ALS providers in your agency and you like the iGel, you can put it online for your ALS providers. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm sure everybody knows that, but just as a thought to put in your head,
We need
the
to have
iGel
that.
is really nice. It's an LMA that doesn't need air.
So
It's a sweet device.
we probably need to add that to our list on the protocols of acceptable devices, because it's not on the list.
Okay.
So we have combi tubes and King Airways, and I'm not sure what else is in the protocols, but iGel is not there. It might be helpful to
Yeah.
include that on the protocol list of acceptable alternative airways.
Easy peasy, I can take care of that.
Okay.
Thank you. I didn't think about that. Perfect.
So the blood transfusion policy for ambulances is still being debated. There was a lot of debate at both the STAC meeting again and SEMSCO CMAC in regards to why ambulances can't administer blood and blood products. They can, but they have to go through the Wadsworth process, which we all know is labor intensive and cumbersome, and most agencies are not doing that. Air ambulances have the approval and they're working on the policies and procedures of how to track that. And there's also a bill that is being debated or discussed at the state level that will allow EMS agencies to carry, administer, and continue blood transfusions. But that hasn't made it out of committee yet. They're not expecting it to make it out of committee this year, and it will likely be quite some time. What they were hoping to do is tag on to the law regulation that allows the air ambulances to administer and change the terminology from air ambulance to appropriate assigned transport modality. So make it more generic, but they still have to get the approval for ground ambulances to be able to give blood. Did I capture all that, Jonathan?
Yeah, a lot better than what I would have.
STAC is also sending a letter of support for that bill and for the ability to either pass new regulation or amend the current air ambulance regulation to include ground ambulances, whether it's a transport rig or pre-hospital EMS.
So I think we clarified, I think that for everybody who heard this, I know we've said this in the meeting before, but protocol changes take place throughout the year. But they don't go into effect until January of the following year. I think that we need to make that clear to our providers. Because I think they look at the new protocol changes and make their effect immediately. So if we can just remind them, protocol that doesn't really take effect that until the following January, that's what they say is the.
No, I can tag on to that, they will work on new protocols throughout the year, but at the end in the January time. So that way we're not updating our protocols multiple times.
That's the way I understand it. And they won't be changed in the protocol until the January 1st.
Right.
Yeah, which is not historically the way that we've done it. We've done it piecemeal in the past. Some of them have gone into effect like the moment that we even talked about it, and it started like there was a delay and nobody's known. So yeah, the plan is work on the protocol changes all year. January 1st, they will actually be published and go into the talk in the meantime, right? We're gonna and let me yet again, until I'm like dead, plug the Red Caps site, which is on our regional site, right? Like it's the protocol submission button. Please use it. Most of our input right now for new protocols is coming from providers, and that means all of us.
something comes into your head, like, if you can't get yourself to the regional website, send me an email, do something, right? But the board brain's working on that. Cool, anything else?
Oh,
That's been increased.
yes, ambulance reimbursement's been increased by Medicaid, and I don't have the exact numbers written down, but it was, I don't think it makes a difference.
It's very
but
complicated.
It's complicated, and it's nowhere near what it should be, but any sort of movement in the right direction should be celebrated and appreciated. And it was, I mean, it wasn't a huge increase, but it was enough to make a difference. And it was enough, I think, of a showing that our words are being heard. Lobbying does work, and we just need to be a little bit more organized about it sometimes.
So when you say it's complicated in what data?
But there's a formula, it's a formula you have to meander, so there's a level for level, so the basic transport, the ALF transport, there's 3 different formulas. And basically, so currently, it's like it's $195 charge times 1.28, and then for ALF it's the same amount times 1.52, and then for ALS 2 it's 2.2 times 2.2, what's like that? 2.2 that's your baseline level, and that's what they'll get reimbursed. So it doesn't come out like a ton of money, like think about multiple it's got 249, 60, 96, and then 429 in terms of reimbursement, which is up from where it is today. Much better than we were at. It's still not anywhere near what it costs to run a
So-
national out.
For the BLS level, it's about $191 increase. For the ALS 1 level, it's about a $240 increase. And ALS 2 is $240, and specialty care transports are around $240. Your numbers are right.
So just so you guys know, you need to speak right straight forward because it is coming jumbled.
Okay.
Thanks, Tim.
And we're not able to hear. I don't know about anybody else on this call, but I barely heard anything that Storm said.
Okay.
Basically, that it's just about a $200, $150 to $250 increase based on the level of what it's getting billed at. That work?
Works for me.
All right.
Do you guys have this in your head about how much would an ALS 2 call give back to the ambulance total, not the increase?
Without the increase?
With the increase, I'm sorry.
With the increase, I think it's 200 and, so an ALS 2 says it's 429 according to my figures. But I wrote down
29 per call
Right,
for an ALS 2.
right.
Just so that we have an idea what we're dealing with, right? Like specialty care is a little more than that. Everything else is a lot less than that. But those are numbers that we don't always kick around as medical directors, but they're numbers that we should have in our heads so that we have an idea of like, why are things in the crisis they're in, right? $429 to fuel an ambulance and provide a crew for an ALS call is the reason that the system is broken.
And on top of that,
Right, and that's with the increase. That's not what we're getting right now today. That's what we're getting when the increase comes through. So, you know, if you didn't know what the numbers were in your head, now you do. Okay, sorry, Storm. What were you, I cut you off.
oh, that's all right. I was just gonna say that I think that, you know, you have to add the mileage to that, and that which really gives them their reimbursement advantage. And then that makes it a little more workable, but at least that extra $200 will pay at least one crew member, depending on the length of the transport.
Right,
And that's really the thing that does you in, is the cost of the personnel, depending on the length of transport. So, you know, you're sending a critical patient somewhere, and remember, they only get loaded mileage. They don't get the drive to wherever they're picking the patient up from, which is what makes transport so difficult. When you talk about moving patients from one hospital to another. There's our dilemma and why we can't get more providers, more people to run these services.
It's a losing proposition. Okay. Cool. Anything else from CMAC?
That's right. Not that I think, there was a couple of other things, like they talked about, some requirements that they were gonna look at for agencies. What are the standards, what's achievable, what equipment is actually needed for ambulances? And then there should be regulations that are up for public comment. Education is going up this summer. There's some for operations that are going to be going up. Remember that if you're talking at all to providers and you're thinking about doing national registry exams in place of the New York State exam, and they are thinking they're going to get reciprocity in New York State by taking the national registry, that emergency order has gone away. And they will need to take their New York State exam if they are going to work in New York State. Correct, Tammy? That was what they said. Yeah.
That is
I
correct.
just wanted to-
And they will not be eligible to just automatically take the national exam. That, by the way, is what's happening with our traveling nurses as well. Those traveling nurses that don't have New York State licenses, that were just operating under the regulation, the emergency regulation, are now not able after today to work in New York State. So I know at CVPH we're losing a handful of travel nurses that do not have New York State licenses.
As of yesterday, that was fun.
Wow.
All right, and then there are a bunch of new pilot education programs coming out, which will be helpful. There's the EMT Academy style program. There's BLS Intro to Paramedicine, which I have not explored, but I'll take a look at. And then there's a bunch of new policies for education and training. So all of that stuff is going to increase funding for the first time in probably, how long have I been around in state council? Probably 30 years. So probably this is the first time we've increased funding. It's nowhere near what it needs to be to educate a provider. It will pay their tuition, but it will not pay their books necessarily. So there's still the book problem. You know, the biggest problem for agencies, however, or sponsors who want to do this is that where does the money come from? Because if you start a patient in a course and they don't finish it or they drop out, you lose that reimbursement, which is why people are charging tuition, because it doesn't work the other way around. Nice in theory, but does not function well.
Right.
So we need to come up with a different kind of way to reduce.
Yeah.
Right, that's it from the state.
Awesome. Thank you both. All right, and thank you, Tammy. Also our contributor. Good. Okay, program agency report.
All right. Somewhat prepared to talk about this. So for those of you who don't know me, I am not Ann Smith. Ann is no longer with the program agency. She took a job with emergency preparedness. She's basically traveling hospital to hospital and helping them with their disaster plans and running drills. And she absolutely loves it and calls me every day to tell me how much she loves it. Which it's nice to hear that she at least enjoys it. So I'm going to share this and give you a quick little rundown of what we've been doing at the program agency. Maybe. So new policy statements that have been released. So the 2301 is the BLS iGel pilot program. 2302 EMS instructor training requirements. 2303 BLS protocol change log. 2304 was the collaborative protocol change log. 05 removal of ET tubes for the AEMT level. 06 is oxygen tank compliance. they're finding when they go out and do a lot of their inspections that agencies have oxygen tanks or any other compressed gas tanks, so their nitrous, if they're carrying it, are out of date with their hydrostatic testing. And I mean, it is what it is, kind of, but it's what they're dinging them for. 07 is scope of practice by level of EMS provider, breaking that down. 08 is the pilot the educational programs that Storm mentioned. A lot of really cool initiatives in there. One of them is a internship program where a layperson from the street can come into an agency and say, I'm not really sure if this is for me. It gives the agency a way for them to come in and do some ride time. EMT class is a form that the agency can fill out that they did the ride time with them. So it gives them a little bit easier of a time getting them into a class that is sponsored.
It makes them eligible
Yes.
for funding, is what it makes them eligible. But the good piece is, so even if agency wants to go on a limb and try and pay for them because they found them an acceptable employee and they might want to hire them, they can then get reimbursed for their training, which would be nice. Because that's really the hardship.
There's also in there the BLS to intro to paramedicine, which basically is it's a BLS refresher, but it's going to dive a little bit more into the pharmacokinetics side of things and a little bit more of advanced A&P level, just to give them a taste. And that's kind of driven more from the New York City area, just to give people that experience. And then there is the academy style, which they're going to allow the every course sponsor to do one academy style training EMS or EMT class a year, correct?
Right, once a year.
And then what's the last one?
You mean in the educational program?
Yep.
Let's see, one.
The bridge. Oh, and the funding. That was well. Yep. And then the educational funding. And then so New York State Policy Statement 2211, the process for registering providers in the health commerce system. So providers should be able to start registering for the health commerce system soon and be able to access their own cards digitally. All of your agencies should already have access to the health commerce system. If they do not, have them contact our office and we will be more than happy to walk them through the process of getting themselves signed up and verifying them in the system. For PEC, if you have any updates or need to add anything to your agency's PEC stuff, the email address is there. We do have a list available for everybody in the state. So if you have questions, if one of your agencies is a PEC agency, you can contact our office. We'll get the link to you and send it out. Protocol education.
So in PAC, remember that that's the pediatric. They just got their 4-year grant funded. So they have money to be able to give courses and to help you with courses. So if you contact Amy Eisenhower, she will be more than glad to do that. And so if you have a particular day, you want to do pediatric day long thing, or maybe even a half a day or an evening, she will be very helpful. That kind of assistance to be able to do that. And I think that that's the piece of PEC that I think is a great piece, is let's use it for the education.
So we have launched the learning management tool. We got a heck of a deal on this because the programming agency bought it. And because we cover the 2 regions of North Country and Mountain Lakes, we were able to buy it for both regions for the price of one region. It's an incredibly useful tool. And it's a good place. Right now we're building learning tracks for recertification. So there'll be a learning path in there for every level of care. So if an agency has an agreement with the state that they want to do 100% online CME, this will be able to cover it. And then agencies don't have to go out and pay for an outside platform, because we're already paying. We're gonna start importing, as allowed, a lot of Bruce's lectures that he has done through Elizabethtown. Clarkson University over on the North Country side, they have a education series with speakers that they've also agreed, as long as their speakers are good with it, we'll upload those to our system. And we're also in partner with Governor Rescue, which is over in the North Country side. And they received a SAMHSA grant last year for an education project, which Dr. Bombard has spoken for, I think. And they're in the process of getting permission from all of their speakers that they've had. And we are actually fulfilling part of their grant requirement by giving them a platform to put the education out. So there's going to be a lot of really good things coming from that. So please make sure you get providers registered for it. We have the regional database still. We're still slowly trickling in Mountain Lakes providers into it. But we still, while we have a little bit of ways to go, we're in good shape with that. We do have our weekly newsletter and directors newsletters that go out. If you have anything that you need sent out, that would be either Mountain Lake specific or both regions specific, training and EdWise or job postings, anything like that, please feel free to send it to us. You can send it to our paperwork address. You can send it to Zach directly. You can send it to myself directly. We're more than happy to post that stuff out for you and help with any of that stuff. So for PAD, we have usage reports received from the DEC on 12/23 and 4/21. Argyle Central School District on 2/23. Town of Queensbury use on 11/26. We had a new application from Town of Stony Brook. We had some updates come in from Washington County, the Adirondack Mountain Club, Queensbury, and Town of Queensbury. Quarterly reports were received from Greenwich Central School District, Salem Central School District, Hartford, and Queensbury. These are the BLS iGel applications that have come to our office and been forwarded back to the agencies to send to the Remo region for the project. So Indian Lake, Cambridge, Bay Ridge, Scroon, Bolton, Hay, Aquasasnet, Warrensburg, Keene Valley, and Boone. We've received 12 lead BLS applications from Indian Lake and Ticonderoga. Agency updates, so medical director changes for Champlain EMS, Ellenberg Center, Ellenberg Depot, and Empire Ambulance MP. Just sent us an update saying that he had resigned. We currently don't know the status with Empire Ambulance on if they have a new medical director or not.
Have you heard anything? Said no. Are you still there? I think John said at the beginning of the meeting that they are directorless.
Okay. I do recall hearing. So agencies up for renewal, Essex County, or agency renewals, sorry. So Essex County EMS, Lake Placid EMS, Morrisonville EMS, Rouse's Point, and Paul Smith and West Glens Falls BLSFR updates. We do have a new application for a BLSFR from Fort Anne.
Are those things approved at this point? Or
Don't know if we need Zach. I don't know if it's state renewals or renewal for.
And do we need to approve the BLS 12 stuff?
Yeah, we have to vote, we have to approve the BLS 12 leads and then the agency renewals. Which I can either put them up on the screen or Jonathan, you can do it. They should be in the meeting materials folder.
Well, let's do the BLS 12 leads then.
I make a motion that we approve the BLS 12 leads. Both of them. All of them.
Second that. And for Indian Lake, I know they have a good education program up and running and are good to go.
That was bad. Laura, do you have tech on your?
Yeah. I know they have an education program that's also up and running.
Great. Any
Yeah,
other
both
discussion or?
from January, so we've had both of these applications for a while, so we have all of their training stuff, we have their medical director forms, so they're both just waiting on our approvals.
Any opposed? No, okay. And I think we will approve both of their applications. Great.
Okay, give me 2 seconds.
John is just pulling up the document for us, just 1 second.
Can everybody see that?
Yes.
We see protocol updates in education. Now we see agency updates.
Okay. Zach, were these state agency renewals or are these Mountain Lakes ones that we need to approve?
The agency renewals we need to approve on. The medical director updates, those were just medical director update changes. And then Rouse's point is the only agency renewal that's also a medical director update too. So we just gotta do the renewals, but they should all be, all of them except for Paul Smith and West Glens Falls would be the same 2-year renewal.
The Champlain. Mike Durso, is that right?
Oh, and also, Plain, Ellenberg Depot, Ellenberg Center, and Champlain.
Okay.
And I believe Altona is also part of the Durso.
Wow, that's fantastic.
And Churubusco as well.
We're in our northeastern. We're gonna go on to one of our newer. Some of you might know that he worked at. He's the EM-boarded doc that's working primarily at CDPH. I'm gonna strongly encourage that he join us, the REMAC, and submit his CV and all of that stuff. But I'm trying to spoon feed him one thing at a time. But it's exciting.
Course. Yep, I can get him to sign up for one.
I approached him with just one agency and he's taken 5 or 6, so this is really cool. So we're very excited. I think you'll like him. He's fresh and sparky, so we like that. Okay, so that's that.
He's already taking responsibility. We had a concern about a patient that came in and he's like, isn't that one of my agencies? And I was like, yes, doctor, that is.
Mike Durso, big hug from us. Okay. Let's do the agency renewals. Keep pushing here.
Okay.
Essex County. Who is Essex County? That must be Laura. Any issues there? Anything we need to discuss? And let's just discuss all of these and then vote as a group so that we're just being efficient here. That's okay. If there's an objection, obviously we'll stop the show.
I don't have any current issues with Essex County EMS.
Mike McFawcett?
Sorry, I was muted there. I have no problems with Lake Placid.
Storm, who is nursing those days? Is that Joe still? It's not transition?
That is still, each.
Oh, it's still John Beach? Wow.
I'm hoping Dr. Mason's gonna take them. When
That
he
would be
gets,
wonderful.
when he, gets a little, so we have another physician who's kind of semi-agreed to become a medical director for us, but he wants to get his feet a little more stabilized within the system, so I'm hoping by fall that he will be their medical director. I'm gonna keep kind of egging him in that direction anyway, because he's local and he will be more help to them and he likes to teach. And it's a big agency that does a ton of calls, so I think he'll be a perfect fit for them.
I do too. I'm excited about that, hopefully. Any issues from your perspective with them?
No, they are,
Their signatures.
they are addressing, they've had a couple of things that have occurred and they've addressed their issues and been very upfront about it and very helpful and supportive of both the tech and the events that happened. And I think that it shows that they're growing and learning how to work QI a little bit better.
Awesome.
Which is really what I would like for them to do. So, yeah, but they're a very busy agency. They run over 2,000 calls a year, so
Also,
pretty busy.
anything, while I have you, anything we need to know about Rouse's Point?
No.
Okay.
You know, they're gonna, Champlain is gonna do eventually, they're gonna just take, I think they're gonna wind up taking them over. They may still keep their ambulance because.
Yeah, they're currently working on the CON. Champlain is currently working on the CON application. We currently, Champlain covers Rouse's Point for all calls Monday through Friday, 24 hours. And then on the weekends, we have an EMT that's in their station. They've contracted with Champlain to put an EMT in their station on the weekends. And they provide the driver and additional staff. So the two agencies work really well together to ensure that the time is covered.
Sorry, Tammy, I should have asked you about that Rouse's Point. I know that you're up. And Scott, who's the medical director of Paul Smith's?
That's a good question. It was, I can't even remember. I don't know who the current medical director is, but there's no issues with the agency. We just would have to look at the application to see who signed it.
Could you just like email me that? Because that's something.
Dr. Brian, I have Dr. Brian on their side of their
Okay.
application.
Okay. Yep.
No. Is she there with you guys in Queensbury? I know she was planning to be, but I didn't hear her on roll call.
No, do not see her.
And West Glens Falls Fire, any issues down there? Is that you, Tom, that is West Glens Falls? Doug?
I thought I had West Glens Falls EMS, not West Glens Falls Fire.
This is a BLSFR. They
Might be.
have,
Oh, West Glens Falls Fire, who is that currently?
let's see.
Yeah.
You.
It is.
It is you.
I know I had it previously. Okay.
I just had to get to the form with the signature on there. Yeah, and we have their forms and stuff. They're all set.
Yeah.
Super. Okay.
And same with Paul Smith. We have all of their forms. They're all set. And those are both just kind of updates because they're BLSFRs. And then same, the only thing that we'll have to really vote on would be the new 40 and fire as a new BLSFR.
That's coming up. All right. All of these agency renewals and mass. Somebody make a motion, please. Oh, great.
Make a
Dr.
motion.
Mike. Somebody second, please.
Second.
Excellent. Any discussion? Any opposed? Okay. A new application from Fort Ann Fire. What's going on with that?
Yeah, they're going for their BLS.
Great. We have all the stuff. Zach?
They are applying for a new BLSFR agency. We have, just gotta find it here.
That's me.
It's been a couple months probably.
Yeah, I think, as far as I know, that's fine. Yeah, I think they were just starting it. I think this is their first go round.
Yep, yeah, initial application looks like it was back in January. We have all their PCR stuff. They're going right with the state's free platform there. We have
And I think they're working with Ford and EMS for QA, QI, and training.
Yep, they're doing the CME program also. They're going for BLS glucose, BLS 12 lead. Being slow to open here because they sent one file with all the attachments in it. But we have all of their stuff, basically. They should be good to go.
Who's our medical director?
Me.
Dr. Williams.
Sorry.
Good deal. Any problems? Should we approve them? Okay, is there my, any problems with them, Tom? Should we approve them?
They're a first time application.
Great. So let's have a motion of.
I'll move to approve.
I'll second.
Second.
Okay, second.
Discussion? Any opposed? Okay.
Agency updates from prior meetings, Owl's Head, Chazy, and Plattsburgh City.
And
Yeah.
these are ones we didn't get to vote on in January because we didn't have a quorum, so they got 3-month extensions. But we have had all of their paperwork, so they are also all set.
Plattsburgh City's good to go. Never mind. Owl's Head and Chazy. I don't know who has those guys.
Chazy would be Dr. George now.
Ah,
Remember, he took over all of CDPH's agencies.
okay,
And then that's going to change in July again,
right.
when the new doc comes.
So,
But at this point, I believe that they have signed the, I think they've signed the agreement. I'm not sure of that yet, but I'm pretty sure that's in the process.
okay. And I don't know who has Owl's Head.
Owl's Head is Franklin County, Dr. St. Jean.
Okay. Dr. St. Jean, any problems with Owl's Head? Should we approve them?
Yeah, no problem.
Great.
Things going.
Okay. So why don't you make a motion to approve all three? We'll get this moving.
Motion to approve.
Thank you. Second?
We got a second out here.
Excellent. Any further discussion? Any objections? Okay. All right, we're on to old business. We have a reciprocal agreement to touch on and a little CME stuff that John has for us.
Yes, give me 2 seconds.
Okay. So the reciprocal agreement, I'm just gonna let him type here and I'll talk for 1 sec. So that he doesn't have to multitask. The two of us just had an agreement on it. Reciprocal agreement is something I just signed for you guys. Hopefully that's okay with you, but I think we talked about this before at some point. And all that says is that if we have a provider, let's say in the North Country region, that's transporting patients to our region here in Mountain Lakes or vice versa, that those people don't have to do double duty CME submissions, right? So they are going to do their requirements for their home region, not for the other region, and we have agreed to honor that. It just cuts down on the paperwork and the aggravation for our providers. So if they're credentialed in one, they're credentialed in the other, as long as they keep up their good work.
Yes.
If there's a problem, the problem will get handled at the receiving end. So like, let's say they're a North Country provider, but they're transporting to a Mountain Lakes hospital. If there's a problem with that call, it will get handled by the Mountain Lakes region. Does that make sense? Because they're transporting to a Mountain Lakes hospital and vice versa. So if we've got a provider in Mountain Lakes that then transports to, let's say, Messina Hospital, which happens all the time, and there's a problem on the call, then it's going to be handled by the North Country region because that's where the receiving hospital is. Just keeps it clean. That's all the agreement says.
So I do have a question with that, Tiff, because generally speaking, at least from an EMTALA standpoint, a patient is the responsibility of the transferring, not the receiving physician until they're received. So from that standpoint, it's a little convoluted if we're making the receiving facility responsible.
So we're talking about 911 calls here, not interfacility transports. Because you're absolutely correct. Per EMTALA, if it's an interfacility transport, you own the patient until they get to their
I got you.
receiving.
So you're just saying 911 calls that cross regions, not transporting between. All right, I lost the context. Sorry.
Yep, everything else is as it always has been. No changes there.
Bruce raised his hand too.
Bruce,
Yeah, I was just gonna voice a similar comment. I mean, like, if I pick someone up and take them over to Burlington to the trauma center, I'm functioning off my home base protocols. So even if I cross borders or anything like that, I'm still based off my home protocols, which would then bring the QA back to my home agency. I think it should be the home-based agency that really has the process for quality assurance.
So,
go ahead, John. Sorry.
so really where the big thing with this agreement is while it does deal with the online medical control aspect of things, it also, the purpose of it is so that our providers that are working in both regions aren't having to do double duty on their CME requirements. Right now, if we have a provider that is based out of the Mountain Lakes region and they work for, we'll say E5 support services, and they're running in Messina or Ogdensburg or somewhere in the North Country region, they also, on top of doing Mountain Lake CME requirements, have to do North Country CME requirements. Where with this agreement, we will be able to streamline that to our CME requirements in the North Country side are the same as our CME requirement. They aren't the same requirements, but they're looked at as being a reciprocal agreement. So those providers don't have to duly do CMEs twice in a semester or a year. It does say that they have to uphold to the more stringent requirement. And North Country does biannual CMEs and has skills, where I believe Mountain Lakes is annually. And I apologize for my lack of intimate knowledge on this. I have hit the ground running and I'm trying to learn it all as much as possible. But I'm also trying to learn all the details over on the North Country side as well. So it's a little overload for me. Tammy, I see you got your hand up.
Yes, I think they're two separate issues, though. I think that continuing education and training and quality of care are related, but two separate issues. I feel that if there's a quality concern with the care a patient received, whether it's 911 or transfer, I believe it should be up to the facility receiving the patient to give feedback to the agency where the provider resides or where they're working for at the time. And it's up to that area or agency to manage the quality review of the case and outcomes with follow-up continuing education for the provider. Me in my county trying to, give continuing ed or QA follow-up for a provider that dropped a patient at my hospital is virtually impossible. We can barely manage to do that for our own people in our own areas, let alone do it for somebody outside of our area. So I think that's how that should be.
that was the intention of the document, Tammy. Let's take a look through, if you can pull it up, let's take a look through and see if it's worded acceptably.
Do you need me to zoom in, everybody, or can you see it okay?
Yeah, zoom in a little bit for us down here.
So Tiffany, this is Bruce. My only other thing with this is, so it's saying that we're gonna accept online med control from the destination. So if I was taking a patient up to, say, St. Lawrence Psych Center or something like that, I wouldn't even know the phone number to call. I would still call my own med control number.
I think that's fine, Bruce. The intent of this is just to give people some guidance for your general 911 call, not for interfacility transports. And that, ability with receiving physician that can use, but you know, it's unchanged.
This one or this one?
Is there an issue with merging the online requirements between the two organizations and make them parallel?
I think that's something that would require a REMAC to REMAC conversation. I don't think it's a bad idea. I think there's a lot of good things that happen over here that would benefit the side. Vice versa, being the person who kind of bounces the line between the two. Extremely beneficial to maybe set Lombard and the people from have a conversation on what can we do to try to bring our.
So the question is how much with in terms of a medical director or the agency, they're gonna have to go to.
Yeah.
I think we because I think that if we go to look at efficiency, that's REMAC is kind of very broad, more generic than we wanted to.
Well, and I think the only reason why it is so generic is because this is the same as Central New York and with mid-state regions as well. So it was just more to keep it as a uniform form for all of the three.
We may want to work on that piece of it to say that if there's an issue with the patient arriving that didn't get the appropriate care, there's issue. So we go back to that, which is what we would like to do. I think
So coming from with that sort of, but it all actually dives down to whatever the REMAC or policy statement is on CQI. I will use the North Country for an example. For North Country, their policy is everything comes to the program agency and then we send it to their agency meeting. So that way it's just one centralized point of contact. We're still in the loop on if there is a global issue, a CQI problem, but generally it comes to our office, we forward it to the medical director.
Whereas we often end up going directly to our medical directors in Mountain Lakes.
Go directly to them.
So how to expediently resolve that?
Work on amendments to the last paragraph if this body wants to approve Dr. Bombard to. I can send it up to everybody. I've made those changes. We can work together. Changes, their next meeting.
Three of us could cook something up. All right, let's do that.
Does that work? Anybody else?
Work on the
We
reading.
have conversations, I'm sure.
You said you said, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, we didn't hear anything down here really. The audio was terrible this meeting. We really heard.
So Storm and John and I are going to work on revising that last paragraph so that if there is some avenue to go directly to the agency medical director with any CQI issues. And we're going to put that out to you guys as a proposal for approval, for just an e-vote approval, if that's okay with everyone. And is there any other feedback on this document? Anything else that you guys want changed? Because otherwise, after the revision, I'll just sign it and we'll let it.
They're gonna edit and send it out.
We might have comments after we see it, but we just haven't really seen anything beyond what was put up on the screen. So
That's all. Yes. Put up on the screen.
it was just difficult to read it all at once. So yeah, definitely, do your edits and send it out. I didn't see anything obvious there, but if you could send it out to us once you have your edits done, and then we'll be able to kind of read it at our leisure.
We'll do it, Tom. Thank you. So Zach, for the minutes, we're gonna edit and resend out.
Okay.
But if you would attach that document to the minutes as well as it stands,
Sure.
that would be great. Thank you. Do you have anything else we need to talk about under reciprocal and CME? Great. Bruce, where are we with the RSI CME approval?
So basically, we've put together an 8-hour day program that would cover basic review of anatomy and physiology of airway ventilation, including static task training of basic airways, advanced airways, all the way up through to surgical airways. And then there would be a clinical requirement in the operating rooms, as with this time we were proposing 10 intubations over the course of the program in order for certification or recertification. And we would issue a certificate that just basically says you completed the program. It would still be up to the medical directors to put people online as far as RSI credentialing, so to speak. But we would give them the base knowledge and experience necessary to meet the requirements. As far as the state goes, there's been some changeover at the state education level. So I kind of thought we were making headway, but I haven't talked to the new regime as far as issuing course numbers for this. As far as our liability insurance company, all we have to do is basically put them on a student roster. It doesn't have to be a official state student roster in order to be covered under our liability insurance. Now, we're just kind of creating this as part of our program, but I'd be willing to share this process with anyone if anyone wants to duplicate it or whatever and create their own process. The biggest thing is going to be the agreement with the anesthesia groups in the hospitals in order to allow students in. I can tell you, as a program director managing the clinical side of things, getting inside the hospitals is an onerous task. And it's not something like we could throw up a class next week and have everyone cleared to go into the clinical setting. you know, for the handful of shifts that it would take to get 10 tubes. I envision running this, you know, once, maybe twice a year. You know, and then we would have to figure out a cost as far as time commitment for the instructors and the clinical coordination of this. That's where we're at. I can't hear you.
Thank you.
Sorry.
So synopsis.
You're on mute.
We can't hear you, Dr. Bombard, down here.
Can you hear her now?
No, not yet.
Zach, do you have conflict of interest or stuff?
Yeah, you're really quiet still, but yes, we have, I can pull it up. I can also send that out along with the whistleblower stuff, which is the next thing.
Really, I think it's just we need them from those who haven't sent them in. We can work with the individual to get that taken care of.
Yeah, it's our annual meeting, so it's just the same conflict of interest that we've been doing. So it's just a new year, so we have to do it again for this year. And the whistleblower one is new, which we did talk about. I don't think we voted on it in January because we couldn't vote, but we have discussed it before. That one's, the whistleblower policy is new.
Is that something that we need to approve, Zach? Because if so, we need to see it.
I think it's,
Oh, it's a resolution. This doesn't need to be on our.
what did you do?
They have West Glens Falls has a call, so should be done now.
Very middle school, 455 mediation room, assault car 210 on the scene, 4-car accident. 26-year-old female evaluation from airbags implementation is
2 seconds to shut the sound off. All right. Zach, can you mute yourself for 60 seconds?
How is that? Is that any better?
Yes, you were much better, Doctor.
Oh, he's probably waiting for the call to finish. Zach, let us know when you guys can hear again, and we'll try my own mic.
But I don't think you can hear us. You should see the whistleblower policy now. We don't hear you again now.
Somebody on Teams is messaging that. They can't hear you.
How about now?
Yes, we got you.
Okay, great.
You hear- Okay.
This is a great tech meeting today. It's all right, we'll get better. All right, so it looks like this whistleblower thing is something that shouldn't have been on our agenda. That's just on the REMSCO. So let's blow that right through. And then new business. John and I were just starting to talk before this meeting about some new software that you guys should be aware of that they're using in Albany.
So Sarah is being utilized by Albany Med and Glens Falls Hospital for incoming patients. We're now seeing it over on the other side of the region of the area with Central New York. So Syracuse hospitals are going to it, as well as the mid-state hospitals. So everything in Utica and Rome. It just seems like a natural fit that we would slowly progress ourselves in that direction. So we, on the North Country side, had a contract with, Javari, which was a diversion notification tool, because we were starting to have a lot of issues with hospitals going on diversion and nobody really knowing that those hospitals had gone on diversion until you rolled in their door and they started yelling at you. We are sunsetting that program to go towards Pulsera. It is free at the base level for all users, so hospitals and transporting agencies. Basically, it allows you to create a patient channel and update the hospital with information on that patient as you're transporting to them. It also has a really great functionality for being able to transmit 12 lead EKGs to the hospitals that are signed onto this program. We had our first initial meeting with them. It will be an actual Pulsera person who comes and talks to the appropriate people at the hospitals to get them online. And the way that the rollout would go is it would start at the hospitals and then would eventually roll to the EMS agencies to get them online.
Okay. And it's cell phone based, computer based?
Cell phone based.
What is it actually? So
Yep,
the provider
so
uses their own cell phone.
Yep.
And then what is it hooked to at the hospital?
It sends to a computer, or if they put it on a phone, it goes to a phone.
Okay.
Yep.
And then the non-free part.
The non-free part, which has a cost to it, is more for internal operations at hospitals, for like stroke team activation, STEMI team activate, your activations for your teams within the hospitals. And it also, with the paid version, and I might be wrong with this, but it allows for a clearer patient channel from facility to facility. So if somebody's received at Alice Hyde and needs to go to Plattsburgh or to Burlington, if that hospital is online with the Pulsera system, that patient channel just travels with the patient. So you, as the receiving facility, are going to see from the BLSFR who gets on scene and what they did to create that patient channel, all the way to when that patient arrives at the receiving facility. And it gives the opportunity for follow-up afterwards, because when that case closes, they can actually go in and edit and say what the end result was for that patient. So it kind of completes that circle nicely for us. If you all would like, I can schedule a meeting with the Pulsera rep to meet with this body and other hospital affiliated people that you feel are appropriate to give a much more in-depth and probably understandable version of what the platform is for.
So will this do away with our radio system?
No. You'll still need to have the radios for backups.
Storm's question was, will this do away with our radio systems? And the answer was no. Which makes, like, we all know that we live pretty rurally here and that cell phones are not going to work all the time. And when it works, that's great. When it's not, it doesn't work. The component that I've heard about this system that excites me is none of that, right? That stuff is all nice, but it's like, it doesn't probably augment what we have right now all that much, to be honest, right? But what I have heard is that there is an integration into our EMR at our hospitals that will actually feed back a disposition to the provider that transports the patient. So right now, when you're an EMS provider, it's like spitting into the wind, man. You drop these patients off and you get zero feedback. And so you can do something 100% wrong over and over and over and think you are an absolute public safety superhero because you don't know what the dispo of your patient is, right? So this has been a problem with education in EMS since EMS was invented. And this piece of software will actually spit back the dispo of the patient to the EMS provider so that they have some idea what happened and whether they were right or wrong or somewhere in the middle. And that can change the world. Like, that piece can absolutely change the quality of our EMS providers with, zero work on our part, which is always nice. But the question for you, John, is do you know if that's part of the free or part of the paid?
It's part of the free.
That's part of the free.
It's part of the free.
Wow, that's exciting. That's
Yeah,
amazing.
there's a lot of really, really neat things that can be done with the program.
Awesome.
Even at the base free level.
Cool.
So ultimately, the goal is to get the hospitals to sign. Pulsera's goal is to ultimately get the hospitals to sign on for a larger version that they have to pay for. But in the meantime, starting up and getting ourselves going and getting our feet on the ground with it, the free version is more than what we need.
Fantastic. Tom and Doug and Ben, what's your experience been with this? This is me just asking you because I have zero experience with it.
So far, it's great for patient tracking and response feedback, to agencies. As far as pre-arrival, I think it works well. Nurses seem to appreciate it. The tone when it goes off in the ER is a little annoying sometimes, but apart from that, it's fine so far.
Yeah, it seems to be functional. I haven't run into any problems on the hospital side. I haven't heard too many complaints. Are you guys using it?
We don't get feedback from patients. That's not a thing that happens.
I don't think we're at that phase at the moment. That's a
Okay,
paid,
that's what
that's a
they're
paid
talking
feature. Yeah.
For sure, because you should be able to access the patient record. I thought that what we still have is that they have the ability to look and see what happened to the patient.
I don't know
And
about that.
like if they go to cardiology or neurology, you might be able to see stuff.
I haven't yet, and I brought in some of those patients.
Yeah.
All right. Let's follow up on that.
Okay. Anybody else with new business? If not, I'm going to move us in just briefly into executive session before we go, because I have some info for you guys that I need you to be updated on. Any other new business? Okay. So I'm not sure how we do executive session nowadays.
So everybody who's not invited to stay in executive session has to either go away or.
Okay.
Yeah.
So any guests, I guess, need to go? If you're a regular member of this committee or you're a regular contributor, go ahead and stay.
Yeah, it was fun.
Yes.
And then I think we stop the recording or start a new recording.
We stopped the recording.
Okay. Okay, beautiful. And we have a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Oh, we have to have a motion to come out of
Come out of
executive session. Thank you. May I make a motion to come out of executive session?
Second.
Excellent. Thanks, Emmanuel. And now we need a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Thank you. Super. Thank you, everybody. Meeting adjourned. See you next time.
Take care.
Oh, we